Kicked out at 17 with only $12 and a trash bag. Now my family's begging to move into my $750,000 home after years of lies and ignoring me. The rain wasn't just water that night, it was a cold, judgmental shroud. I stood under the flickering fluorescent glow of a bus shelter 2 blocks from the house I'd called home for 17 years, a soaked trash bag at my feet containing my entire life. Inside it, a few changes of clothes, a worn-out copy of On Food and Cooking I'd saved for, and 12 crumpled dollars in my pocket. That was it. The sum total of my existence to my family, a trash bag and $12. It hadn't started with a bang, but with a quiet, surgical incision to my soul. A few nights before the expulsion, my father had been sitting in his worn leather armchair, the one that smelled of old pipe tobacco and unyielding authority. He was buried in his newspaper, and I, foolishly, had tried to share a sliver of my dream. I mentioned culinary school, the idea of building something with my hands, with flavor and passion. He didn't look up. He didn't shout. He simply lowered the paper, his eyes devoid of any paternal warmth, and said the words that would become the bedrock of my resilience: "You're not built for success." He said it calmly, as if he were stating a simple, irrefutable fact of nature, like the sky being blue or gravity being relentless. The sooner you accept your place in this family, the easier life will be for all of us. Your brother's the heir. You're just the spare. The spare. The word carved a hollow in me. It explained everything. Growing up, I was always the background character in the Epic of Nathan. My older brother was the golden child, the sun around which our family planet orbited. His room faced the lake, mine faced a brick wall. He got a brand new car on his 16th birthday. I got his outgrown bicycle and a lecture on gratitude. He was champ even when he failed. I was a problem even when I succeeded. I tried. God, did I try? I got a job at 15 bagging groceries, kept my grades solidly in the B+ range, and even started tutoring Nathan in math when he began slipping. I thought if I could be useful, if I could prove my value, the scales would balance. But nothing changed. My mom called me lazy when I slept in after a double shift. My dad scoffed at my unambitious career goals. And Nathan? He'd just smirk, a silent, smug spectator to my perpetual demotion. The climax came the summer before my senior year. Nathan went to a party, drank too much, and wrapped his prized car around a telephone pole. He wasn't hurt badly, just a cut on his forehead and a world of fear. I found him in the garage, trembling, reeking of beer and desperation. "Please," he begged, his eyes wide with panic. "Don't tell Mom and Dad. They'll kill me." A foolish, desperate hope ignited in my chest. Here was my chance to prove my loyalty, to show I was more than just extra. So, I crafted a story. I told my parents I'd taken the car without asking, that I'd panicked and fled the scene. I stood there, taking the verbal blows, my father's cold disappointment and my mother's tearful accusations, thinking this sacrifice would finally mean something. I was wrong. My father didn't yell. His fury was a quiet, terrifying thing. He just pointed to the door, his voice like gravel. "Pack your things. You've embarrassed this family for the last time." I spent that first night in the bus shelter, the plastic of the trash bag sticking to my damp legs. The next morning, shivering and numb, I walked back to the house, hoping to at least retrieve my school backpack from the porch. It wasn't there. In its place was another trash bag, knotted tightly at the top. Taped to it was a note in my mother's neat, looping handwriting: "You're on your own now. Learn something from this." No one called. No one checked. I later learned my mom told her friends at church I was rebellious, that I'd chosen a life on the streets. Nathan, absolved of all guilt, went on a family vacation to Florida 2 weeks later, posting smiling beach selfies. The silence from them was absolute. For 3 years, there were no birthdays acknowledged, no Christmas cards, no concerned, "How are you?" It was as if I had never existed. I kept myself alive. I worked double shifts at a grimy convenience store, my textbooks hidden under the counter. I slept in the stockroom on flattened cardboard boxes when the manager, a kind-eyed man named Sal, looked the other way. I used the library's Wi-Fi to teach myself digital marketing, building a tiny freelance business from the ground up, client by painstaking client. The silence from my family was a constant, aching hum in the background of my life, a reminder that I was disposable. And then I was free of them. I got my associate's degree, moved 3 towns over, and rented a studio apartment that was all my own. The silence was no longer a punishment, it was a peace I had earned. Until last month. A single text from my mother lit up my phone. "Is that your face on the billboard off Route 9? My breath hitched. Yes, it was. The local Chamber of Commerce had featured me as their Young Entrepreneur Spotlight after I helped several small businesses skyrocket their online sales. To the world, it was a small accolade. To me, it was everything. It was proof. I wasn't a spare. I was a creator. 2 hours later, my dad called. I didn't answer. Then came voicemails from Nathan, from aunts and uncles I hadn't heard from in years, all of them suddenly warm, suddenly supportive, suddenly curious. The whiplash of their attention was nauseating. I didn't reply. I knew, with a cold, certain clarity, that they hadn't changed. They had simply seen that I had something they wanted. The next day, my mom's voicemail made it explicit. Her voice was saccharine. We're going through a rough patch. Nathan and his wife might lose their apartment. The baby's on the way. We were wondering if you still had that spare room you used to mention. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that echoed in my beautiful, silent home. That spare room didn't exist. I had bought the whole damn house, all 2,500 square feet of it, and I had bought it in cash. I didn't respond. Not to her, not to my Aunt Janice's Facebook message about how I needed to step up for the family. Step up? I nearly choked on my coffee. Where were they when I was sleeping on cardboard, Aunt Jan? But my silence wasn't a wall to them. It was a door they felt entitled to walk through. A week later, I came home from a client meeting and saw it. Their familiar silver Honda Civic parked across the street from my house. And there, on my porch, perched on my wicker bench with a Tupperware container in her lap, was my mother. She stood up, a practiced, fragile smile on her face. "Oh my God, you look so good," she said, her arms already reaching for a hug I did not return. I stood my ground, my keys digging into my palm. "Why are you here?" "I wanted to see you," she said, the lie smooth and easy. "It's been so long." "Is Nathan okay?" I asked, cutting through the pretense. Her smile faltered. The mask slipped. "He and Alyssa lost their apartment. The baby's coming. Your father thought maybe we could all stay here. Just for a few months." The audacity was breathtaking. "You kicked me out with a trash bag and a note," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I begged you to listen, and you told me to learn from it. And now you want me to give up my peace, my home, for the son you threw me away for?" She blinked as if my words were a physical blow. "It was complicated back then. We were doing what we thought was right." "No," I cut in, the years of pain giving my voice a sharp, final edge. "You were doing what was easiest. You believed Nathan because it was convenient. It didn't matter that it ruined me." For a fleeting second, I saw a flicker of shame in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by defensiveness. "Well, we didn't know how things would turn out. You've clearly done well for yourself, so maybe it wasn't such a bad thing after all." There was the ultimate rewrite. My suffering was now their tough love success story. "You're not coming inside," I stated, my tone leaving no room for argument. "And you can tell Dad and Nathan that this house doesn't have a spare room." As I turned the doorknob, she hissed the word she must have been holding back. "You're being selfish." I paused, turned back, and looked her directly in the eye, a cold smile on my lips. "No, I'm just done being useful to people who only remember I exist when they need something." I closed the door. I heard her stand there for a moment longer before her footsteps retreated down the porch steps. That night, guilt, that old, familiar ghost, tried to haunt me. What if I'm the monster now? But then I remembered the look on her face when Nathan lied and said I'd hit him. I remembered her crying for him, her golden boy, while she looked at me with pure, unadulterated disgust. I remembered the silence. The bone-deep, 3-year silence. I owed them nothing. But a part of me wanted accountability. Not revenge, exactly, but a reckoning. So, I did something I should have done years ago. I opened a new document and began to type. I wasn't writing to my immediate family, I was writing to my extended family, the cousins, aunts, and uncles who had only ever heard my parents' sanitized version of events. I told them everything. The car crash. The false confession. The trash bag on the porch. The years of radio silence. The Tupperware ambush. I even attached a screenshot of a text Nathan had sent me years ago, gloating about how easy it was to get rid of me. I took a deep breath and hit send. The ripple effect was immediate. My phone, muted from the family group chat for years, began to buzz incessantly. Messages poured in from private numbers. "Aunt Marie, is this true? I never knew. Uncle Leo, your parents said you ran away, that you were on drugs. Cousin Denise, I always wondered. I'm so sorry. That text from Nathan is vile." The validation was a bomb I didn't know I needed. I hadn't written it for pity, but for the truth to stand up and be counted. Then, a message from a name I never expected. Alyssa, Nathan's wife. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. He told me you were unstable, that you assaulted your mom and your grandmother took you in. I feel sick." My heart ached for her. She messaged again minutes later. "I left him last night." After reading my email aloud to Nathan, he had laughed, then raged, then tried to snatch her phone. Seeing his true nature unleashed, Alyssa, 7 months pregnant, had packed a bag and left for her sisters. My truth had been the key that unlocked her prison. I didn't gloat. I simply wrote back, "You did the right thing." I thought that was the end. But Nathan, the fallen golden boy, couldn't stand the exposure. 3 days later, as I was leaving my favorite coffee shop, I heard my name called in a voice I knew all too well. He was leaning against my car, unshaven, his eyes bloodshot, still wearing his faded varsity jacket like a relic from his glory days. "You think you're better than me now?" he sneered, his breath smelling of cheap beer. I didn't answer. I just stared. "You always loved playing the victim," he spat, stepping closer. "You want everyone to feel sorry for you? You think anyone cares about your sob story?" "You lied," I said, my voice calm and flat. He let out a bitter laugh. "So what? You survived, didn't you? You got your big house and your little billboard, so quit crying." There were 1,000 things I wanted to scream at him. Every lonely birthday, every hungry night, every tear I shed into a thin stockroom pillow. But he wanted a reaction. He wanted a scene to prove I was still the emotional, unstable spare. So, I simply stepped around him, opened my car door and said, "You lied. Thrive. And now you have to live with that." I drove away, leaving him standing alone in the parking lot, a ghost of a king with no kingdom left. A week later, a certified letter arrived from my parents' lawyer. They were considering defamation proceedings over my email. I actually laughed out loud. My own lawyer, a sharp woman I'd hired to handle my business contracts, told me to frame the letter. Their case was non-existent. Nathan's own text was a signed confession. I never heard from their lawyer again. When you stop being useful, you disappear. That's when I decided to reclaim the past. I went to a small safe box where I kept the few artifacts from my old life. I pulled out the note, the one that had been taped to the trash bag. "You're on your own now. Learn something from this." I had it professionally framed in simple, clean lines. It now hangs in my office, right beside my Chamber of Commerce award. Some people frame their diplomas. I framed the warning that forged me and turned it into a promise I kept. Spare. That's what he called me. A ghost in the family photo. An empty chair. But the cruelest part of being a spare is that spare parts are meant to be recycled. And that's exactly what they tried to do. It began again with a knock on my door just after dusk. When I opened it, I didn't see my father. I saw a hollowed-out man, shrinking inside a threadbare sweater. He held a thick envelope. "I'm signing over the house to you," he said, his voice stripped of all its old authority. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Your grandmother said you'd earned it more than any of us ever did." My grandmother. A cold dread trickled down my spine. "She's sick," he added, finally looking at me. No preamble, no manipulation. Just a stark, devastating fact. Cancer. Stage 4. We sat in silence on my porch, the same porch where my mother had begged for a spare room. "She didn't want to tell you," he muttered, staring at his hands. "Said it would distract you from your work. Said she was proud." Proud. That word, coming from him, was a wrecking ball to the remaining ruins of my childhood. It wasn't their pride I craved, but hers. She was the only one who had ever seen me. I looked out at the garden she had helped me plant last spring. Lavender, rosemary, marigolds. She called it her living prayer. I could still see her faded gardening gloves hanging over the fence rail. I swallowed my anger because this wasn't about them anymore. It was about her. She passed away 3 weeks later, in my home, in the bed I had bought for her in the sunny room overlooking her garden. I held her hand as her breaths grew shallow. She wasn't afraid. She just smiled weakly and whispered, "Promise me you'll plant something new every spring. That's how you start over." And then she was gone. Her final gift to me was not just her love, but her justice. While cleaning out her room, I found a small, sealed wooden box under her bed. Inside was a stack of journal entries, her handwriting slanted and sure, dated from when I was 9, 11, 14. She had documented it all. The ignored birthdays. The way Nathan would break my things and blame me. The time my mother called me a mistake, in a heated whisper. The truth about the car crash. She had been my silent witness, my archivist. And at the bottom of the box, a deed transfer for her house, already notarized and signed, making me the sole heir. I didn't cry. Her final act wasn't about grief, it was about legacy. She had rewritten ours. The funeral was small, by my design. Only those who had loved her truly, without condition. But of course, they came anyway. Nathan, my mother, my father, hovering at the edge of the gathering like crows in black, waiting for their moment. After the final prayer, my mother approached. Her eyes were dry as they scanned the garden, the house, the crowd of my friends, my chosen family. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice brittle. "Did she leave it all to you?" I looked her in the eye, the way I had on the porch that day, and gave her the confirmation she had always denied me. Yes. That night, they left a letter on my doorstep. It was typed, formal, a sterile request for temporary accommodation for healing and transition. They wanted to live in her house, the one they had abandoned her in when she took me in. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, the hum of my refrigerator the only sound. Then I took out a piece of my own stationery and wrote back. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Turner, thank you for your interest in staying at the residence located at 49 Maplewood Lane. At this time, all rooms are currently occupied by peace, silence, dignity, and the long overdue scent of lavender. As such, we are unable to accommodate guests who abandoned these values in the past. May you find shelter in the structures you built with your choices. Kindly do not inquire again. I posted it online. Not for drama, but for closure. For the thousands of other spares out there who needed to hear it. It went viral. People messaged me, not about the spectacle, but about the relief of seeing someone say no and build a beautiful life after the word. Today, I walked through my grandmother's garden, the soft earth cool beneath my feet. I knelt in the spot we had chosen together and planted something new, just as I promised. A single white rose bush, its name etched on a small, wooden stake. Rebirth. The story doesn't end with their exile or my anger. It ends here, with roots, deep and strong and finally my own. Because I'm not a spare. I am the seed that survived.